But then I want to take you to the evolution of this narrative further with the introduction of the work of the International Law Commission. The International Law Commission, as you know, was established in 1948. And for decades, this commission worked on trying to codify laws dealing with serious crimes at the international level. And what they did essentially over that period of time, until 1996, when the work culminated, they were able to draft definitions of these core crimes, identify what were the key core crimes, as the most serious, most egregious crimes that the international community had to deal with. And they adopted a draft code of crimes against the peace and security of mankind, which identified some major core crimes: crimes of genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, ethnic cleansing. And out of this whole evolution, we saw the emergence of the establishment of two ad hoc tribunals: the International Criminal Tribunals for the former Yugoslavia and the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, to deal with these two very serious cases. And this eventually led to the 1998 Conference of Plenipotentiaries, the conference that created the International Criminal Court, a more permanent body to deal with these types of crimes. Now, what the International Criminal Court did was introduce a statute which obviates the need for ad hoc tribunals and place a permanent international criminal system in place to deal with individuals who have committed these types of crimes. But it was very clear that the court, the International Court, wanted to ensure that its work was complementary to national criminal justice. It wasn't supposed to compete with national criminal justice, but complementary to national criminal justice. So in some ways, the Rome Statutes basically consolidated much of the previous and existing international humanitarian and criminal laws that existed, that were previously agreed upon by the majority of states in the international system. And this is where we stand today. Since that time, we've had the introduction of what we call the responsibility to protect norm. And this is after decades in the last century, the decade of the last century, being preoccupied with conscious, shocking atrocities. The UN realized that it failed miserably to live up to the promise of never again. And that promise, the price of that failure led to the suffering of innocent people, the deaths of men, women, and children. And there were at least many different interventions by the United Nations to stop these crimes, and these interventions have failed. And it took the leadership of Canada. I think it's very significant that the Canadian government has something to do with this. It took the leadership of Canada to create something called the International Commission on the Intervention of State Sovereignty. A commission which basically redefined sovereignty in such a way as to ensure that states would not use sovereignty as a fig leaf to cover up their sins when it comes to these international crimes. That commission essentially said that any crimes committed by states, any of these core crimes committed by states, whether it be genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, ethnic cleansing, would definitely be subject to international criminal justice. And within the context of the International Commission on Intervention of State Sovereignty, the definition of sovereignty was redefined in such a way that if nation states who claim to be sovereign could no longer stop their people from being slaughtered, then the international community had a responsibility to step in and intervene in those cases. In 2005, the United Nations General Assembly met with 191 member states, or the representatives in New York. And they basically entrenched this norm of R2P into something called the outcome document. It is not quite a law, but it is a moral responsibility in the form of a norm, which says that, one, nation states have the responsibility to protect their own people. If they are not able to do so, if they're not willing to do so, or if they turn a blind eye to slaughter within their communities, then the international community will act. And this particular norm is now guiding the international community. But as you know, we've had since that time the war in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan. Many people criticize the United States for utilizing the norm of responsibility to protect in order to be able to intervene illegally in Iraq, in order to be able to intervene in places like Afghanistan. So it's no wonder that many states, particularly states in the developing world, states that have undergone discrimination in the past because of colonialism, that many of these states think that this is a neo-colonial measure. The powerful will utilize this principle of responsibility to protect in order to keep the weaker states in line. So there's been a bit of a backsliding away from this concept, a backsliding away from this norm. And it's a hope that somehow the international community can sort of, again, refocus attention on the intent of the norm. And the intent is to protect innocent people at risk. The intent is to bring security, human security, in places where there is no security. The intent is to ensure that individuals, regardless of the color, regardless of their religion, regardless of their gender, regardless of their status in life, can enjoy the same kinds of freedoms and protections that we here in Canada and in many of the Western countries around the world enjoy. So I still think that this principle, this norm of responsibility to protect, is an important one. It's something that we should not let go of. And I was hoping that we could somehow make a pledge to ourselves to encourage our members of parliament, to encourage our prime minister, to encourage our leaders in our society to refocus attention on this particular very important norm, because I think this holds a lot of hope for our societies to bring an end to the slaughters that we've seen in the 20th and the beginnings of the 21st century. So I thank you very much for your attention, and I hope that you will join me in keeping a focus on this particular norm, because I think it's extremely important if we're going to live in a civilized society globally, not just here in Canada, but around the world. Thank you very much.